Now, a few of you out there might not actually believe this, but it does seem like I've started to get a bit of a laser focus when it's coming to the pickups. And if you're interested to see what I picked up over the last few weeks, then you just wait until after these. Now, I know all too well that you out there aren't going to believe me when I say that I've been laser focused when it comes to video game pickups over the last couple of weeks, but it's true, and I'm going to show you them all, the games that I picked up over the last 4 weeks or so, in chronological order, from the newest games right back to that juicy retro at the end, and each and every one had a purpose to come into the collection. It wasn't just a case of something shiny that I just had to pick up. So let's get this show on the road, and we'll start with the newest game that I've picked up, and a few of you are going to think that this is quite a surprise for me because it's Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now, for me, Resident Evil 4 is a game that I don't really like. Well, I didn't like it back in the day, and not because it's a bad game, it's just because to me it wasn't Resident Evil. Resident Evil 1, 2, 3 and Code Veronica were all fantastic survival horror games that I adored, but when Capcom released Resident Evil 4, well, it was just too much of a change for me to embrace. And also, to be frankly honest, the control schemes in this game aren't great. Well, on the original game, I'll have to keep mentioning back to the fact that what I've picked up here is a remake, as most of you already out there know unless you've been living under a rock for this last month, and maybe giving this game more modern controls will make me fall in love with Resident Evil 4 for the first time. The proof, however, will be in the playing, and it will be getting played quite soon. So keep your eyes peeled for some Resident Evil 4 gameplay from this very channel, coming up probably fairly soon. Now, that was the only PlayStation 5 game that I picked up over the last few weeks, so we're moving on to a new system, and that system will be the Switch, because as most of you out there already know, the Switch is starting to make a home here in this Sony Pony heart. And it's a good thing because it's a machine that you can either play at home hooked up to your big TV, or you can take it out on the go, and that is what has really drawn me in with the Switch. Now, the first game that I picked up for the Switch is A Hat in Time, a 3D adventure platformer, and this game is, well, it's not for me, this game is for the better half. Now, don't get me wrong, I will dip into it and see how it plays, but this isn't exactly my cup of tea when it comes to gameplay these days. It will, however, keep the better half suitably occupied, so I can get on with much bigger, longer, more involved JRPGs while she's stuck into smashing barrels or whatever it is you do in these 3D platformers. But that is A Hat in Time coming into the collection, and it got some decent reviews, so I'm not too upset about that. Next up, and still with the Switch, it's another 3D platformer, and it's Super Lucky Tales. And for the very same reason, this one's going to keep my better half occupied while I'm diving into the world of Octopath Traveler and games like that. So as much as she thinks it's completely generous, it's all purely for selfish reasons. So new Super Lucky's Tale coming into the collection to keep the better half occupied again once she's finished with A Hat in Time, just so I can play more games like Live a Live. Now, next up, I'm still with the Switch, but this is a game that I did pick up for myself this time, and that game is a game that's been out for quite a while, a very popular game, and it's Animal Crossing New Horizon. Now, I've avoided picking up this game for such a long time, and that's purely because I know it's going to be a huge time sink, and yes, I've started playing it already, and it is a huge time sink. The beauty of it is, though, you can just dip in for maybe half an hour each day if you want to, just to keep on top of things and earning a few bells to pay back some of your mortgage. But of course, if you take the notion, you can also spend a good few hours in Animal Crossing just crafting, harvesting resources and making as much money as you can. But that's Animal Crossing New Horizon into the collection now, where it's unfortunately going to stay forever and take a huge bite out of my gameplay time over the next few months anyway. Next up, we're moving away from the Switch and onto the PlayStation 4, and the first game that I picked up for the PlayStation 4 is a double dip game, a game that I already own digitally, but I had to get it physically. Well, 3 games I should say, because it's none other than Assassin's Creed, the Ezio Collection. Now, as I said, I do own this game digitally, so I have no need for the disc whatsoever, and the reason that I bought the game digitally was so that I would never be tempted to trade it in or move it on to someone else. It's just as simple as that. However, not so long ago there was some problem with my Sony PlayStation account and I lost access to all my digital games, and you know what? That's not happening again. So I decided to get Assassin's Creed the Ezio Collection and all of the games that I've got digitally on a physical form. I am a physical collector anyway, but it's back into the collection in a physical form where it will stay forever, and when I have a problem with my PSN network, if someone else hacks it or whatever, then it's still going to be with me regardless. Next up, we're staying with the PlayStation 4, and it's another game that I've double dipped on, but I haven't double dipped on this game when it comes to digital terms, it's generational terms, because I do have this game on the older generation, and that game is Assassin's Creed 3, but this one is remastered. Now, the reason it has taken quite a while to get Assassin's 3 remastered into the collection is because Assassin's Creed 3 is my least favourite of the Assassin's Creed games. Now, that's not because I was jaded with the gameplay of Assassin's Creed back then, and it's not because I didn't think that they'd done anything interesting or new with the gameplay to just spice things up a bit. It's purely all down to Connor Kenway. Because to me, Connor Kenway is the most disappointing character in the whole Assassin's Creed series, and I don't think without a shadow of a doubt that anyone could say that Connor Kenway is not the whiniest assassin in all of Assassin's Creed history. So that's Assassin's Creed 3 remastered into the collection where it will stay forever, and I will play it again just because it's an Assassin's Creed game. Next up, we're still with the PlayStation 4, we're still with a double dip game, and we're still with Assassin's Creed because I picked up Assassin's Creed Rogue remastered as well. Now, Assassin's Creed Rogue is another game that gets shuffled quite firmly to the bottom of the pile of the Assassin's Creed games when it comes to my opinion of them, and that's definitely not down to the character, the gameplay or anything else. It's just purely from the fact that you were conditioned to play as assassins for so many years to then turn your coat and become a Templar, and it was just something that didn't sit well with me at the time. Now that I've got the remastered edition for the PlayStation 4 into the collection, well, I'll take Rogue out for another spin again, and I'll try not to judge the Templars too harshly as I'm playing through this, but no promises whatsoever. Next up, we're staying with the PlayStation 4, but you will be glad to know that this is not a double dip game. This is a game that's coming in that's not already up there, and it's Dragon Quest Builders 2. Now, I don't know what your feelings are on the Dragon Quest Builders games, but I absolutely adore them. And that's basically because what it delivered to me was Minecraft, but with a structured story. When Minecraft originally came out and my kids absolutely adored that little game, I watched them play it for hours and hours, and I watched them get astonishingly good at the game. I did dip into Minecraft from time to time, but it didn't hold my attention for any longer than a couple of hours at most. However, if you tag on a JRPG storyline and put in those same sort of building mechanics, then I'm in hook, line and sinker. So Dragon Quest Builders 2 is into the collection. I'm looking forward to giving this a proper playthrough because it's my kinda shizzle. Next up is the last game for the PlayStation 4 that I've picked up over the last little while, and it's another double dip game, but you'll understand why I've double dipped in this when you see it, because this game came from none other than my good old dealer over here, and that is Spider-Man, but this wonderful special edition, and I will throw up some b-roll for you to get a proper look at what's inside this box. Now, I'm not going to talk about Spider-Man because if you play video games or know anything about video games and you're watching this channel for goodness sake, then you know what Spider-Man is all about. And that doesn't matter whether you're a Sony Pony, an Xbox or a Nintendrone. When this absolute masterpiece of a game was released, it took everyone by surprise, but surprise in a good way. So I was more than delighted to get this Spider-Man special edition from my good friend, the dealer, and it came straight from his own personal collection as well. So this Spider-Man special edition will be going up there on the wall where it will be displayed proudly, and I'll never need to play that physical disc, so it's going to last a lot longer than the one that I do play. Now, as that was the last of the PlayStation 4, we're going to have a generational drop. Moving on to something different, because I did pick up a console from a previous generation, and that is a Nintendo DS Extra Large. Now, I have started to get really into the Nintendo DS, playing games that I didn't play back in the day, and I really need this extra large screen just now. I'm not going to lie to you, no way, shape or form. These old eyes, these 50-year-old eyes, need these bigger screens. Now, I will be looking at getting a 3DS to try some of the games that come out in that system, but at the moment I'm more than happy to have this DS Extra Large, and I'm going to be playing a lot of Final Fantasy on it, I would imagine. Now next up is a video game and not a video game console, and it's for the PlayStation 3. And the game that I picked up for the PlayStation 3, and the only game that I picked up for the PlayStation 3 this month, was Persona 4 Arena. Now, I would never have looked twice at this game maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but after being introduced to Persona 5, that completely changed my whole outlook on the Shin Megami Tensei series. And I'm very glad it did, because now I've got a whole new world to experience. Now, I know the Arena games are nothing like the mainline games, but the Persona universe has sucked me in so hard that I've just got to pick up everything I see from it. And of course, when I stumbled across this copy here with the original soundtrack disc complete, well, I just had to buy it. So that's Persona 4 Arena into the collection forever. Now, that was the only game from the PlayStation 3 generation that I picked up this month, so we're going to have to drop down to Generation 6, and you're going to see a bit of an oddity, a bit of a rarity even when it comes to this channel, because I've picked up a green spine, and that game is Crimson Skies. Now, yes, I know a lot of the Xbox fans out there will be whooping and throwing their hats into the air that the Sony pony has finally picked up another green spine, but it does happen, and it happens for good reason. As many of you will probably know, since Red Baron was released by Dynamics way back in the early 90s, I've been looking for that unique dogfighting experience in a video game since then, and nothing else has managed to match it. Now, I would love to say that Crimson Skies would slot into that hole and sit side by side with Red Baron, but it's a completely different game. But what I'm going to say is this is one of the most fun experiences I've had playing a video game in such a very long time. It's just a wonderful arcadey flight combat game that will absolutely suck you in. The characters are amusing, the missions are fun, and just so far I've absolutely loved every minute I've spent with this game. Now, it is a game that I wish that I'd had back in the day, because I would have put much more time into it, but the beauty of going back and playing vintage and classic games for the first time is, well, you're playing them for the first time, so that experience that you would have had back then, you can have it all now. So that's Crimson Skies, High Road to Revenge, coming into the collection, and this is a green spine that will be treasured in here. Now, that was the only green spine that I did pick up, so we're moving back to the blue spine of Sony and the PlayStation 2. Now, as you know, the PlayStation 2 is where the main focus of the collection has been, and I have cast a much wider net, picking up games that I never played back in the day, would never have played back in the day, games that are completely bad, games that are licensed games, especially games that are licensed games that are especially bad. But the net is wide, and it's no difference this month, because I have picked up a few PlayStation 2 games for different reasons. And let's start with a licensed game, and that is Rocky on the PlayStation 2. Now, it's been a long time since I've played a boxing game on any video game console, but when this rather nice example of Rocky made its way into my hands, I just had to pick it up. Now, I did put a little bit of time into it just to see what it was like, and you know what, it's not too bad, or at least it starts off not too bad. I'm looking forward to playing the movie mode just to see how that plays out, but I think Rocky is a game that I'm probably going to pick out from time to time and just sit down and have a few rounds with. So that's Rocky on the PlayStation 2 coming into the collection forever. Now, next up is another licensed game, and it's not a bad licensed game, or so I've been led to believe, because the game that I've picked up is The Punisher on the PlayStation 2. Now, I didn't play a great deal of this after picking it up, but what I did absolutely impressed me. Now, of course, you have to bear in mind the era that this game came out in, so it is a little bit rough around the edges in places, but what it seems to lack in style, it certainly seems to make up in substance. There seems to be a lot going on in this little game, and from the short amount of time that I had to spend with it, then there was so much to do that I'm still confused at what I was actually doing. But what I can say is that I quite enjoyed what I played of it, so it's definitely one that I'm going to go back to, and I'm going to put more time into it and try and, well, get good. It had fairly decent reviews at launch, and I'm sure a few people still speak about it today, but that's The Punisher coming into my collection, where it will stay forever, and it will definitely get played at some point. Now, next up, and still for the PlayStation 2, is not a licensed game, you'll be glad to know. It is a classic remake, and the classic remake that I decided to pick up because I saw it out there in the wild and I thought, you've got to buy this. It's Rampage Total Destruction. Now, of course, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I was exposed to every video game known to man at the time in the arcades. And Rampage was definitely one of the games that hoovered in its fair share of my pocket change. Now, I didn't play Total Destruction when it came out, and I wasn't really aware of the game at all until recently. But stumbling across this in a second-hand shop for the princely sum of £2, I thought this was a no-brainer. It has all the hallmarks of a game that I need in my collection. It's a classic game that's been remade. It's on the mighty PlayStation 2, and I'm fairly certain that it's going to be quite bad, or at least I'm going to feel like it's bad compared to the original. But Rampage Total Destruction is coming into the collection and I am happy about it. Now, last up for the PlayStation 4 is a game that must come into the collection. It's a must-have game for me, and you're going to understand why when you see it, because it's Persona 4. Now yes, I have got Persona 4 Golden for the Vita and I have played that just recently, and I'm definitely likely to go back to P4 Golden to play on the go, but I was absolutely thrilled to bits to come across Persona 4 out in the wild and pick it up, and it still has its original soundtrack in there as well. So this means I can play this game on the TV, and it's going to be a big TV through a retro tank, and that's obviously going to be a much more comfortable experience for me as well, because as much as I love the Vita, the screen is a little bit in the small size for me to want to put hours and hours into it, even though I did with P4 Golden. So yes, absolutely delighted that Persona 4 for the PlayStation 2 physical form is in the collection, and very, very happy about that. Now we're moving away from PlayStation 2 down a generation to Generation 5, and that was the generation of consoles that really drew me into console gaming. So yes, I have a great deal of love for the Sony PlayStation, and for the Sony PlayStation I have picked up this month 3D Lemmings. Now 3D Lemons was a game that I played back in the day and I didn't overly enjoy it compared to the original Lemming games. So you're probably asking yourself, why did you pick it up? Well, that's quite simple, and I will throw in more b-roll and show you here. On the spine, as you can clearly see, is SCES 00009, so it's one of the first 10 games to be released over here in Europe when Sony released their games. And as many of you probably already know, that I'm going for a subset, and that subset is games 1 through 10 of the first releases on the Sony PlayStation. So 3D Lemons, although I'm not likely to play it much, although I can use my PlayStation mouse on it, which is quite nice, I'm not likely to play it much, but I needed it into the collection, and it has had some gameplay and it will get a bit more in the future as well. Now next up we're staying with the PlayStation, and it's a game that I'm probably going to pile a lot more time into than I will with 3D Lemons anyway, and that game is Transport Tycoon. Now Transport Tycoon was a game that I played to absolute death back in the early 90s, but on a PC. And yes, I have tried this out with the Sony PlayStation mouse and it's not quite the same. I'll be frankly honest, if you do pick this game up, I would stick to using the controller, as that felt just a little bit more natural to me when it came to playing this game. I don't know whether it was designed that way or whether the PlayStation mouse was just merely a secondary thought, but if you're a fan of the Transport Tycoon game from back in the day and you want to play this on the PlayStation, I would stick to the controller. It just seemed a bit more smooth. Now of course, if you played this on the PC back in the day, you'll know that the PlayStation version just seems a little bit stripped down. Not in a bad way, it's still a very impressive port of this game, but the definitive way of course is to play it on PC. But how many people have a DOS PC of that age kicking about that they can fire up the original Transport Tycoon? Because this is one of those games that has been pretty much lost to time unless you can pick it up in ports like this. So that's Transport Tycoon, a game that I played absolutely to death back in the day on PC, coming into the PlayStation collection where it will be loved and played rather a lot, I would imagine. Now next up and last for the PlayStation games is another game that I played a lot of time on back in the day but on PC, and didn't play too much of it on the PlayStation at the time, and that game is Command & Conquer. Now Command & Conquer, as many of you out there already know, is a real-time strategy game. It has a lot of tongue-in-cheek cutscenes and storyline, but the essence of the game is quite simply build your army, destroy the other army, move on to the next mission. It is such a well-crafted game however, and from what I've played of it on the PlayStation, it's not a bad port either. Unfortunately however, it doesn't have mouse support on the PlayStation, so you are restricted to only using the PlayStation controller, but that's not too bad because they have refined it and it does work well, so using the controller you won't have too many problems. Won't be as fluid as it was with a mouse, but it's a good enough job and it's a great little port to have on the PlayStation, and I'm utterly thrilled to have Command & Conquer in the PlayStation library. Now next up we're going to have a bit of a time jump because we're going down 2 generations. We're skipping out the 16-bit altogether and moving on to the 8-bit generation, because as many of you will know that I've recently picked up a Master System, and along with picking up a new system, well, it means picking up some games for it too. And the first game that I picked up for the Master System I'm going to show you today is Cart Only but it's Sonic the Hedgehog. And why Sonic the Hedgehog? Because the second that I picked up a Master System, just about everyone in our grand screamed at me, go buy Sonic the Hedgehog to compare it against the Mega Drive version. Now I'm going to throw my hands up here and let you know that I haven't played Sonic the Hedgehog on the Master System as of yet. I will get round to it, but I do want to play it back to back, side by side with the Mega Drive version. And yes, it is loose cart only at the moment. I don't mind having loose carts for certain games, but I will want this one as boxed and complete at one point. So keep your eyes for this moving on, or getting upgraded, boxed and complete. But that's Sonic the Hedgehog for the Master System. Most of you out there in the Master System community will be glad to hear is here. Now next up, and for the Master System, is a game that most of you out there will know that I've already picked up, because as soon as I picked it up, I had to play it and I had to put some video footage out there of the game, and that is the Terminator on the Sega Master System. Now, where do I start with this game? Well, firstly, I don't need to talk too much about it because I've talked about it previously in 2 other videos, and if you want to see those, I'll put the link in the description. But let me tell you, if you think NES is hard, then you need to try some old school Master System, because this takes it to the next level. It is a beautiful looking game, it's a beautiful sounding game, but it is tough as all hell. But of course, it's also a licensed game from a great license, and it's a decent game as well, despite how hard it is. So the Terminator on the Master System coming into the collection, where it's going to stay forever. Now next up is another Master System game, and it's another licensed Master System game, but one that you haven't seen yet because I haven't put any gameplay out, and that game will definitely be getting gameplay put out on, and that's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Now, the reason that I picked up Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was, yes, it's a licensed game. It's a licensed game for a system that I collect for, so that's pretty much a gimme when I see them out in the wild. But what was more important about Indiana Jones, other than it being a great license, a license that I absolutely adore, is the fact that the Indiana Jones port on the Sega Master System is actually ported from the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64 and other 8-bit microcomputers. So this one I'm absolutely fascinated to play, because I will be able to play it side by side, and more than likely for your own entertainment as well, with the ZX Spectrum port of this game. Now, I'm aware that there's also an NES version, and I will probably hunt that down at some point too, but in the meantime, it's a Master System port of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It's coming into the collection where it will stay forever, and it will be played side by side against the ZX Spectrum to see which machine truly was the 8-bit master. So there you go, my friends, that's my video game pickups from the last 3 to 4 weeks. And what did you think? Drop down into the comments, let me know if these were games that you played back in the day, games that you're picking up now, games that are still in your collection, because interaction between you and me, well, that's what makes YouTube special. It does for me anyway. Now, if you're new to the channel and if you want to see more, then up here and down here, a couple of boxes that will link you to videos that you might be interested in seeing. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, cheerio!